Hi. I thought I would start some of these videos. I don't do this sort of thing. I am interested in this sort of thing. I have been asked if I would have a YouTube channel, and the answer is I would love to have a YouTube channel if I actually took the time to sit down and edit and learn, and perhaps now is a good time for a whole lot of us to learn that kind of thing. So anyway, I thought for one of the first lessons, you can tell I was a teacher, I thought one of the first videos could be a introduction to genetics. That was something someone suggested, and I thought, yeah, I could do a kind of the basic overview. A caveat I'm going to put in every video I do is that I am no expert. I am probably 20 years away from when I would be comfortable calling myself an expert, or at least a couple thousand snakes away from that, which, exactly. So I have, full disclosure, 7 years breeding corn snakes, 4 years breeding hognose. This is my first year with tricolor. So everything I am learning, I am sharing with you, but that does not mean I know it all, you know. So when you have questions, I will offer my advice and my experience, but I always would suggest you seek the advice of the true experts in the field, in the various species and whatnot, which I know with some species that's harder to do than others. So anyway, I thought I'd start off with the type of genes that are dominant. These are the ones that will be visual. You will see different offspring no matter who you pair them with, because that dominant gene comes through.
Go.
I wanted to be sure to go to the source before I gave you any further information, because there are so many terms that are out there that I've heard that I get them mixed up too. So this is a book, I believe it may be out of print, but you can still get copies of it like at Amazon. Genetics for Herpers by Charles Pritzel. It is a vital book of understanding. I actually read this like I was studying for a test in college and taking my notes and all this, and I still like had to go, okay, wait, what did he say? Because I wanted to be sure I had the terms correct, because the teacher in me does not want to give you the wrong information, because that is lame. So what I'm going to talk about is the codominant term. Okay, so Charles Pritzel, yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I know. First video.
That's all right.
It's going to suck. All right, so codominant is basically meaning that you have both genes, two dominant genes wanting to express themselves. So let me show you what I mean with a snake, because they're way more interesting than I am to look at. And I don't care if they look fat on the camera. So this is Ragamuffin. Ragamuffin is a wild-caught female. Now she is 2 years old, but obviously small. The story why she's wild-caught, we are not out to cultivate, to capture, to bring into captivity these animals. That is not our goal. But she was an odd case where a corn snake friend of mine, who lives in their native range, came across her like in her garage in October when she was a little tiny 8-gram baby. Oh yes, now she's mad. And they were just getting ready for their first freeze. She knew that she would die because she had not properly buried herself. So she brought the hog in to take care of her. But then it became the issue of, now you've got this animal that's been in captivity through the winter, now what? And she wasn't really eating for her, which, what do you know, a hog not eating. So she offered her to me free. I didn't, that's part of the wildlife laws. I didn't pay for her except for the shipping, so that I could make sure she would eat. And she is finally eating. She's just being a pain. But the reason why I want to use her is because, like I said, she is a wild type. Now, there is a huge variation in wild type. You see it all the time in the hognose groups. What morph is mine? What morph is mine? Because somebody will have a normal that will look like, someone will have a normal that looks like this. Someone will have a normal, we think he's a normal, we don't know what he is, that looks like this. Some will have more spots, some will not. And they are still considered genetically the same thing. There's just different line traits. Okay, what I want to show you here with her is, especially along the side here, you see the spots go all the way down. That is the marker of a normal pattern. They go all the way down to her belly. Her belly has these dark checks. Hers are exceptionally dark. It's really kind of a trip to me. But that is something that is a mark, okay, yes, of a normal. Yeah, she hates me. Okay, so I took a moment to figure out who I wanted to grab. By the way, I'm using my juveniles because my adults are all in varying stages of being bred. Females either recovering from laying or males who are only interested in breeding, so I don't want to disturb my breeders right now. Tantrum is a year old and she is an anaconda. Now the first thing you'll notice is the color difference. That's the one thing. That might be a possibility of a het sable with her, meaning it might be a hidden gene kind of leaking through, or it just could be that is her color, her normal version of color, and it still wouldn't change. But the thing that makes her an anaconda is it's a reduction in pattern. You can see how her spots are much more spread out. And the one thing I look for, some breeders talk about the solid belly, which she does happen to have, the solid black, but I do have anacondas that do not have that. What I look for is, maybe it's because Brian had that Lincoln, I call it the white wall. She has white wall towers, look at me, love me. Okay, the white line that you see here, yes, Tantrum, I know. Let me have a moment to put Ragamuffin back.
And go.
Okay, so Tantrum is having a tantrum, so this may be cut short. I might take out somebody else. But the key thing I look for is this white line that goes along the side. She is a pretty obvious anaconda by her pattern, so it shouldn't take that much work to see. Now, I'm going to put her back because she is unhappy. But just before I do, she has one copy of the anaconda gene. By the way, I've seen people say, oh, you have anacondas? You know, the people who don't know the species. It's called that because of the pattern. I know that they have it, I believe, in retics as well. And it just has to do with the pattern. Like anacondas have these big circles down their back. Like this guy.
Sorry, that was bad. All right, go ahead.
This is Waldorf, also angry. He is another example of an anaconda. He also hates you, just thought you should know. And you can see he still has the same reduction in pattern. His coloring is different, but you see kind of the what I call the white wall on the side as well. It's a very clean line.
So hissy.
Yes, he hates you. So he also has the solid black belly. This is what some breeders talk about. If you look at the black belly and the white walls on the side when he's not cussing at you. He does have some checks that kind of connect, but there's no question that he's so distracted by the hate. The default position genetically, what nature wants, is for the snake to be a normal. It is what has proven successful for thousands of years. It is what has shown this is what the snake should look like to be most successful within its habitat, within its area. Because, you know, albinos or whites or leucistics, you know, something like that, a bright colored animal is easy pickings for predators. So normal is a dominant gene. Now on, I believe it's called the locus, not getting too technical here, but when we're talking about genetics, you need 2 copies usually of a gene, or every gene, you have spaces for 2, let's put it that way. Yes, hate, much hate. There are 2 alleles, we call them, that go on the locus. Trying to not be too scientific. Basically meaning that you have each snake inherits 1 copy from each parent. That's why there's 2. In case, you know, you didn't know the math. Sorry. So what happens is if you have an anaconda parent and you pair that with a normal, and the snake inherits the anaconda gene from one parent and the normal gene from the other, the anaconda will actually come through. Much hate. Okay, so this is an example of a codominant. Now, what happens when you have 2 copies? Man, he hates me. Usually they calm down when I'm holding them, but they apparently want to put on a show. What happens when you have 2 copies of the anaconda gene? That would be the case of where both parents have at least 1 copy. Okay, so in that case, you get what's called a superconda. This is actually an unnamed boy because he is our last available 2019 animal for sale. He is a superconda. Whenever you hear the term super used with snakes, regardless of the species, what that means is that snake is carrying 2 copies of a codominant or dominant, in this case, gene. So you can see the difference, obviously. When we talk about pattern reduction, it's a complete pattern erasure, except for the flag on the head and the belly, which you can see his is not solid black, but he still has the white walls. So this is 2 copies of the gene.
Okay.
So here we have all 3 of the phenotypes.
Fistful of snakes.
Visual. All right, this is the normal, the wild type, the default position genetically. This is the dominant gene, just showing the spots that go all the way down the sides, the broken up belly checks. There is a wide variation in the colors. They can be anything from almost a greenish, that's why you hear about green line, to red line, and so on. So this is the no copy of the anaconda gene. 1 copy of the anaconda gene gives you anaconda and an angry noodle. With the reduced pattern, you can see there is a great reduction in the pattern. And you can see you can maybe see the white walls on the side, that his spots do not touch his belly. They don't go all the way down to the belly the way that hers do. And then the ultimate reduction in the pattern gene, of course, is the superconda, where there's just nothing. So you can see. So this is an example of a codominant. The way Charles Pritzl says it in his book is this snake here is an example of 1 copy of each of these 2 genes, so that both of these are coming through in him. So you have both the pattern reduction, but also spots. The white wall on the side, but also, the black belly. So you have these differences that come through. Now, breeding-wise, this guy, because he is a superconda, that means all of his offspring will absolutely inherit at least 1 copy of the anaconda gene. They will all inherit 1 copy. That means he can only produce anacondas. You will not get normals with a superconda. It is mathematically, genetically impossible. This guy may or may not. He has 1 copy of the normal gene, like Ragamuffin, 1 copy of the anaconda gene. That's why he's a visual anaconda, and if he had the 2, he'd look like the super. Oh my goodness, he hates me. So, if you breed him, let's say we breed these 2 when they're big enough, okay? The offspring have a 50% chance of being an anaconda like him, or they would be like her, okay? So there's a 50-50 chance of normal and anaconda. If I bred him to Tantrum, behind me, the other anaconda, then you would have a 50% chance of anaconda, a 25% chance of these guys, superconda, and believe it or not, you can breed anaconda to anaconda and have a 1 in 4 or 25% chance of a normal. So they're all possible. And I know this is complex. I'll attach a link to some calculators you can play with. I hope this didn't make your head spin too much. I am now going to shift to recessive genes and hopefully not confuse you any more than I already have.
And go.
Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about recessive genes. This is Pendergast. He is a lavender. He is one of several that we own with these genes. Okay, so lavender is a simple recessive. That means recessive, you could almost say submissive. It's hidden in the background. The example I always use is about my kids. My husband has, I say blue eyes, he says
beautiful
green eyes.
I mean green.
But regardless, that is a recessive trait. My brown eyes are dominant. I am the dom in this relationship. So when we bred and made our children, both of our boys inherited 1 copy of Brian's blue-green eyes and 1 copy of my brown. Because brown is dominant to blue/green, the brown is what is visual. However, because they had a blue/green-eyed parent, that means they absolutely, for sure, are carrying that gene for blue eyes. We would call that heterozygous or het. That's the thing you see all the time. It means they are het, blue-eyed. Hetero means different, just like heterosexual versus homosexual, different versus the same. They have two different two different copies, or two different types, that is, of eye color genes. So while one is seen, visual or phenotype of the brown eyes, they have that recessive heterozygous trait, het, blue-eyed. If they marry or whatever, if they produce children with somebody with blue or green eyes, there is a possibility they will inherit that trait. That's basically the same thing with things, with most hello kitty, with most genes when it comes to snakes. Most of them are recessive. These are the traits that nature has said, this isn't the best to be if you're out in the wild, because something like this is going to stick out quite a bit in the natural habitat. But it is there, so perhaps in certain environments, like in Florida, they find corn snakes with all different kinds of colors, so maybe it would work. It's nature's experiment to see, hey, maybe this color will work. Oh, they all got eaten, never mind. Yeah, but this is his one express trait. He is recessive lavender, but there is nothing else. He can't be normal, because that would be visual if that were the case. Like my sons, their brown eyes are what show because they are het blue brown-eyed. If he were het normal, it would be visual. Okay, there is a chance he carries another gene, but for the sake of this discussion, we're just going to focus on the lavender gene. Okay. Now I'm going to move on and show you an albino girl.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Skedaddle. She is, oh, she's getting mad. She is a female albino.
Sorry.
Which is also a recessive trait. You cannot make albinos unless both parents carry the gene. So unlike Anaconda, if I breed her to, let's say, the lavender boy I just showed you, if I bred her to him, and he does not carry this gene, then, and she does not carry his, all of the babies would be normal. The nature defaults back to what has worked, the normal wild type. But if he carries a copy of her gene, then it is possible. Like if he was het carrying one copy of albino, you would have albino offspring. Now in her case, that's actually how she was produced. Her mother is completely normal, and I was going to take her out, and I realized she just ate yesterday because she's getting ready to lay her clutch again, so I need to leave her alone. But her mother visually is wild type, but she 100% carries this gene, albino, obviously, and 100% carries the lavender gene, which I just showed you as well. So that means pairing her with a snake that also has those genes, either in expressed form, meaning like this is an albino, then that would produce some, or in hidden, in fact, her father was a het lavender and albino, then that can produce this. So finally, finally for this video, you can get both genes. Now in the rarer case, this is why you start getting the more expensive animals. Why are they more expensive? They're more rare, they're more sought after. So while an albino is a fairly common morph, it's the most common morph, I think, pretty much for any species. When you start mixing it in with others, it's like paint. You take the lavender and you mix it with a snake like this that is amelanistic. The melanin, the black, is completely removed. Then you have a snake that has the lavender coloring mixed with a complete lack of black melanin, and you end up with a pink snake. And so Brian, why don't you hand me Grampton? This is Grampton. He is a coral. That is one visual of the lavender, one visual of the albino gene. That's kind of a lame way to say it, but it's a combination. Again, think of it being like paint. We are mixing albino with lavender, and you put those two together and you get the coral. You can see his eyes. They remind me of the lavender eyes, just in the negative form. Instead of the dull button black, they're this kind of pink albino type. This is actually his little sister. He's 2 years old. She is just about to turn 1. Let me get Pendergast out again, so you can see all forms. So you have this plus this equals this. But for this to happen, this recessive trait needs to be combined with, let me try that again. You can keep going, it doesn't matter. Ah, what are you doing? Come back here.
Snake knot.
Okay, go ahead.
It's gone.
Oh. So to get the coral, the less common color, you need to have both of these traits win the battle of nature over the normal type. Nature wants to be normal. We want them to be a little less normal. So if both of these genes are present in the parents and they both happen to combine the right way, you get the coral. Now in corn snakes, which I'll do in another video, and in hogs too, we're getting there too, but you can start having 5, 10, just maybe not 10, but certainly 5 genes in play. You can get all kinds of really weird stuff. And I can, in the next video, I'm going to talk about, the next video about genetics, I'll talk about what's called allelic, which is where 2 genes that aren't exactly the same, they still work together. And they can create a third visual. So if your head's spinning, sorry. So if you're
Too bad.
Too bad, so sad. Now, if your head's spinning, I'm sorry. I don't know. It's the first round of these videos, so I'll be doing more, and I'll think a little, maybe I'll think a little more ahead of time as far as what I'm going to say. So here we are, our collection of dominant genes and a collection of recessive genes. Next time around, I will do something maybe a little more, I don't know. I'll do something different next time because, I'm not going to do the same thing next time. So I hope you guys are staying safe and sane out there. I hope you guys are enjoying your animals and your time. And I hope to see you again soon. Take care.